Kyle Klingman with Trackwrestling, going all the way up to Fairbanks, Alaska. Westley Bockert is the wrestling director for Team Alaska, also the head wrestling coach at Lathrop and Fairbank. How are you, Wes?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm fascinated with your position that you had there in Alaska. You are responsible to coordinating and bringing Alaska together. What does that entail?
Well, the main thing is, kind of constructing with that leadership and coaching staff is going to look like for that year, based off of what our goals are for Team Alaska or Alaska as a whole, and we look at growth as much as what we shoot for goals as success. The growth is just as important as trying to get those Fargo champions. But so we bring in the coaches and, we manage personalities. We try to bring all the top coaches in. And it just works really well up here. I mean, there's some differences. I think everybody has a certain way of doing things, and they get comfortable with that during their high school season or their freestyle club season. But when they get together as far as the summer, and focusing on UWW World Team Trials, Fargo Nationals, maybe Turf Wars, Junior National Duels. They really come together. They get on the mission statement. And they all work towards that goal.
You are from Ohio. What's it like going up there to Alaska and being part of a different state?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest misconception is, when you come up here from a wrestling state like Ohio, and me coming from the military is kind of like, what kind of wrestling they really have here. It's probably soft. I grew up in the, Iowa Hawkeyes era where, you beat on them and push them and break them in 6 minutes. And Ohio's kind of that mindset over there. So I was really leery about how Alaska wrestling would be, but I learned real quick, like, there's national contenders in this state. Maybe there's not 20 or 30 per se if you're bringing a Team Ohio, Team Iowa, Pennsylvania, or Michigan. But you get 5 kids placing, 7 kids placing as All-Americans when you're only taking about 15 to 20 kids. That's a pretty good turnout. And I know there's other states with bigger populations that don't get as many All-Americans.
How do you get kids to buy into the sport? Is it a difficult sell in Alaska?
I don't think it is. I think the hardest part is just getting out the word. It's easy to get the word out in Anchorage and Fairbanks, and but we have to go out to those areas, the villages and stuff like that, and try to pull those kids. I think what it is getting parents to be able to afford to get these kids to our training locations. Fairbanks can just trying to get the Fairbanks from like Juneau down south is just as expensive if you were going from Juneau to Texas. It can be pretty pricey just to move within your own state with it as big as it is. 8-hour drive to Anchorage. When I take all my Fairbanks kids to our training camps in Anchorage, I got to load about 30 kids in a 15-passenger van and an RV and take them down. So just getting people to invest that money and time and, wanting to travel that far. But other than that, these kids are really committed. Alaska kids are committed, dedicated. And, the biggest thing is there are a lot of sponsors and companies that really back what these kids are doing and supporting them through their chasing their goals.
What does a traditional season look like for you? With the travel, do you go to a lot of dual meets? Do you make sure you can package it all together? How do you make sure you get the most bang for your buck?
So the year for us kind of looks like, and it's kind of weird. It's definitely different than a year for, let's say, lower 48 team. So our wrestling season starts in September, which is super early compared to the lower 48. So we start in September. Our high school season goes to December, and they do their state tournament. What we've kind of done now is we've tried to incorporate some youth folk style tournaments in some of those, which folk style up here for any kid below 6th grade is unheard of when I first came up here. So after that high school season, the middle school season starts. For most people, I know the middle school season for Anchorage goes on the same time as high school, but the middle school season will then go into the January to February. So then after February, we start our freestyle club, and it's freestyle Greco. We have some folk style tournaments in there, but what happens is people will fly in. You'll have people from Bethel flying into tournaments and kind of having to pick. And Anchorage is usually the kind of hub where we do a lot of tournaments, Anchorage and the Matsu, Wasilla area. So if you go to those, you're going to see more of the villages coming in to wrestle in those tournaments. And, it could be an 8-hour drive. It could be a 3-hour flight. It could be a bush plane flight. But those guys get to the tournaments, and the numbers are really good. And I think it's kind of it's always taken me back, even 15 years later, from being up here the whole time, how committed and how much work goes into getting these kids to the tournament, and then the tournaments are packed.
When you say packed, what's packed mean? 5,000, 10,000? What does that look like?
No, we're talking hundreds, probably like 500.
500.
I'm not. What's that?
500 for the state tournament.
Oh, for the state tournament, that can get up to, I want to say 1,000. It gets for us. That's big for us. But the numbers are low. But to get all those kids in there, it's just where they're coming from, and some of the names of the villages that are coming in are pretty amazing.
Who's the go-to guy? I know Gabe McMahon has mentioned the Iowa Hawkeyes. Is he the top dog? Is he the best wrestler to come out of Alaska?
If we're going off of, what we've seen out of NCAA, and I can only go off the history that I know of Alaska from the time that I've been here. Cale Byers went to Oklahoma, and he took third in the NCAA's Division I with John Smith. He's probably the most profound, notable kid. We've had NCAA finalists at Division III from here, Dustin Baxter, tons of kids, Alan Bartelli, all these guys going D1, Nathan Hoffer, Arizona State. We've had a ton of studs. Gabe McMahon from Iowa was I met him when I first got up here and started taking over Team Alaska, and he did a camp with me my first year I did the camp. And then his little brother was wrestling for Team Alaska for a couple years. But yeah, so there's a bunch. There's really a bunch. But as far as like accomplishments, really got their name in the books is probably Cale Byers, who took third at NCAA's.
With your role of being the director of Team Alaska, how do you plan for going to the lower 48? Do you have a schedule? Do you just map out what you want to go and what's important to go to?
Yeah, I think a couple key things is where the top competition is. I want to be careful about going to, because it costs a lot of money to go to an event. One, we want to be able to go to where our coaches can all coach all the kids at best age groups. So, we'll look at some of the tougher tournaments with all the age groups in it, Western regions, Western state championships. They do in Idaho. I know it was in Farmington this year, and it went well when they moved it. But so how we look at those tournaments is one, where we set the bar. So I believe what I've done in the last couple of years is UWW has become a thing where world team trials, and it's bringing some of the top studs in, trying to make that team. And then obviously Fargo for years. Those are our priority list. You know, the women's UWW in Irving, Texas, the UWW juniors and U23 that goes on in Ohio, and then the UWW cadet, wherever that is at that time. We try to get those kids to those to kind of see the level of wrestling they need to be at and be training at. And then we're able to get with those coaches and see what's going on and what they're doing and where they're going for training. The other thing is the other tournaments we go to, you know, we support UWW, we support Fargo, we support going to the Western States Championships, Western Regionals, Northwest Regions. So those are our key ones that we focus on, and then I try to raise the money to get those coaches there to support those teams. But then we've got kids that go to Rocky Mountain Regionals, preseason nationals and all that. So we try to support that. It really depends on our budget and what coach I can send there, or what coaches were already going there that help out with Team Alaska, and we can reimburse and help them out get there. But our key is that we get these coaches there with those kids, and they watch them develop. And then when they come back here and they see them during the high school season, they continue that talk with them. Even though they wrestle at a different high school, you know, I still want to talk to my Team Alaska kids and make sure they're improving. Because if they're putting that kind of commitment in, especially their parents are putting in that kind of money, it's important that our mentorship and, you know, our guidance continues through the season, regardless of who you wrestle for.
What's the biggest misconception about wrestling in Alaska?
Probably that there's Alaska wrestling is kind of weak, you know. That's probably the misconception. You know, we've had a lot of national champs. I remember when I first was coaching up here, we went down to California. I think it was the Brute Classic or something like that. We had 65 teams. And at the seating meeting, you know, we had a couple state champs that, you know, and one was a two-time state champ, Kalen Baxter. He went on to Old Dominion to wrestle, but we were trying to seed him up in the top. And one of the comments from the coaches were basically, what do you have to do, wrestle 3 people to win a state title? So that was, you know, that kind of made me reflect on what I, you know, that's kind of what I thought when I got here, you know. But that kid ended up winning it. We ended up taking third as a team, and we kind of lit some fire under some teams there. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me to see how they performed and how we measured up down in California. But it was kind of cool, and I think that is a continued aspect of people's thought when they think of Team Alaska. Now, the coaches at Fargo, I know a lot of coaches, especially with our Greco program, it's starting to get to where they know if they got a wrestle Alaska kid, it's going to be a tough match regardless.
Well, and then you have a pipeline for McKendree Women's Wrestling with Sam Schmitz. He has some good girls on there, and actually has a wife from Alaska.
Yeah, so Michaela, she was a national champ for us. She wrestled for me at Fargo. We started bringing Sam up to work with the girls. You know, I was trying to bring the top coaches up and really build this program up here. And the girls has grown so much. As I think there's a good selection of girls. I think wrestlers go through a different aspect up here because it's really tight and home driven, and you know they don't go somewhere. So traveling, going back home or going back to college sometimes is hard, but I think having someone like Sam who is up here in the summer sometimes makes it easier on our Alaska girls to be okay with that because it feels like family's there. But Sam and Michaela do a great job with our girls. And they maintain that relationship, and we're talking all year, and he's always checking on us and watching us at the state tournaments and stuff. So, you know, he comes in here, helps coach, and he looks for those girls, but at the same time, he's got a pretty good investment, I would say, into Alaska that he doesn't necessarily have to have. and I know he's got it in Illinois too. He's got a lot of girls and connections there, but um, we're just glad to be able to put some kids over in his area that are producing for him and working hard.
What's the best way for you to stay current on what's happening, trends? What's your way to do that?
Um, well, like the Leaders Summit we just had with US, they've got the US Grit. They're kicking off and staying on top of that with the Greco aspect up here. I think we're very, very competitive Greco-wise in the nation. Most of all, trying to stay up with the new stuff with freestyle, watching the videos, getting the curriculums. There's tons of curriculums out there, AWA, Askren has his curriculum out there. So we dab into things like that and different stuff that coaches are putting out and kind of look at it. Obviously, Instagram and all that, they're constantly got people posting stuff out. I got a favorite one. I forget what it is. Compound Wrestling. I think they do a great job when he's showing moves and talking and he's explaining leverage and stuff like that. I love that. So constantly doing the research as a coach, holding myself accountable and not expecting wrestlers to grow and me just sit here and be stagnant on the way I wrestled or what I think works. I think the misconception is coaches come back and they should, build their program and do what they know. But the problem is some coaches need to hold themselves accountable and keep growing and develop themselves as coaches, just like athletes develop themselves.
What's next for you? I don't know what it's like as far as the quarantine for you with COVID. How are you guys managing that?
So I own Interior Grappling Academy. Couple years ago, 3 years ago, we started a homeschool program where kids get their curriculum from a homeschool, maybe Cyberlinks or Ravens. That's what they have up here. And what they do is they come here for PE at 8 and at 9:30 they get their computers and books out and do their schoolwork with me. And they get lunch, goof around, and at 3 to 5 we do our practice. Unless it's high school season, then they go to their practice there. So I've started a homeschool wrestling program here. It's called Student Wrestler Development Program. So the first year, 3 years ago, was 11 kids. Last year was 17. And with all this going on, we have 45 students now, and I had to hire another tutor. So it's blowing up. I love it because in the mornings we'll do circuit training or anything, or the biggest aspect and the game changer I think for the wrestlers is that we'll stop and we'll talk about a certain technique and the problems in it or where they're at, and we'll spend 30 minutes on that one detail, unlike you could do at a regular practice, because you have all these different levels and you don't, you got to get them ready, and you got a culminating event at the end of the season you're trying to get ready for. So we're pretty much running a marathon here, and I can slow it down even more and talk about technique and details. And the other thing is they manage their school time differently here. If it's a state championship week, maybe not so much attention's going towards school, and it's more about technique and eating clean and getting their weight and getting a little bit longer workout in, and and then plugging away at some school. They don't have finals the week of state. That's a big problem in our school district. Is during the state tournament here in December, usually kids have to do finals that week, and that's become really hard on the kids. So cutting weight, getting ready for state, and then doing a final it's just tremendous stress on them. But here we don't have that, so we're able to pick and choose, and that turns over to going to Western regionals or going to Vegas or something like that. We can hurry up 2 weeks out and know that we've got this event coming, and they need to plug away their school, and then we can shut down a little bit and manage our time differently. And I think for those athletes that spend a lot of money and travel that much just to get tougher wrestling in, especially us in Fairbanks, if we go down to Anchorage for a big tournament, we got to drive 8 hours. So if we want to make weigh-ins and all that, we've got to leave a day early, so we lose a day of school. So they got to bring their books with us, and maybe we find a library on the trip or pull over somewhere and make them plug away on some school. So that's kind of my focus right now is mastering the aspect of this homeschool gym on top of the classes in the afternoon. Our 5 to 8 year old class, and then our 9 to 13 year old class, and then our high school class at 3 to 5. So, I'm in here from 8 in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night. Love doing it. I'm retired, so this is what I wanted to do. This isn't really work. This is more like a dream come true. So we're just plugging away and focusing on these kids and keeping up with the lower 48. They're getting 100 matches in, and we're only getting like 30 or 40. So, where do we make that difference up? How do we compete with that? So we've got to figure that out and keep working at it. We're always going to have our backs against the wall in that aspect of things, but we're going to get it done regardless.
Is this your high school wrestling room behind you, or is it a club?
Yeah. So, well, nope. This is my gym. This is interior grappling. Behind me is the mat room, and then I've got this lobby here, which is now my office too. I'm sitting at my desk right now. So this is where all the high school kids go, and they mingle, and they can get the bean bags and go out on the mat and crash around. And then the middle school kids are in my old office. I put my new tutor there, and my wife's in there, and they work with the 17 middle school kids that we have in there. So, and then every 2 weeks we sit down and do progress report, and it's great because I can go on any of their networks, their school, and I can see how much time they spend on a class, or if they're over there plugging on their phone, you kind of call bull crap on them, say, hey, dude, you're only signed into your class for 2 minutes, and you sat over there for an hour. So I love it. It's just staying on top of that.
I've heard Alaska's beautiful. Do you like it there?
Well, I love it. I mean, the colds aren't bad, but I'm from Toledo, Ohio, over the Great Lakes. So, when I tell my family, like, hey, it's colder where you guys are at than it is mine, and it's -40, they see it on the news. They're like, there's no way. And I was like, well, it's a dry cold. There's no moisture cutting through your clothes or anything like that. But, yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. The summers are nice here, as long as there's no fires, smoke in town. But, yeah, it's beautiful. Especially you go down to Soldotna and do a camp, and you get to go fishing or take the kids to the beach. And you see the mountains in the background with snow caps still. It's like, you can't really beat that. It's a good enticer to bring some of the, the world-class athletes up here to do camps. It's always they always want to ask if they can go fishing or hunting out of it, and when's the best time to come up and do a camp so they can do that. So, it's a good tool we can use up here